all of this comes together in the last chart, or starts to come together. And this is increasingly the area that we're very focused on, is combining across these flows to build a more holistic picture. Our systematic positioning index is actually adding up these individual pieces and trying to evaluate the size of these impacts. Craig, can you talk a little bit about slide 14, which is the last slide in our pack?
Sure, absolutely. So as Mike mentioned, we ended up finding a need to combine the equity exposure from vol control, CTA funds, and risk parity, because occasionally they'll be doing different things. For instance, just last week, we saw vol control funds selling while CTA funds were adding exposure. And to a certain degree, those flows are going to cancel each other out. So while we do obviously track these flows individually, we have found a lot of benefit in combining them to get a broader picture of overall buying and selling that's happening. So as Mike mentioned, this is our systematic positioning index. And combined, when we look at risk parity, vol control, and CTA, we estimate that there's about $1 trillion of assets under management within all of these strategies. And when these funds, these mechanical quantitative funds, all start buying in the same directions, they can have just massive impacts on the underlying index and create, these huge disparities between whatever the economic picture is at the time and what the equity markets is doing.
So if you notice on this chart, you'll actually see in 2022, we hit basically a full standard deviation below normal in terms of exposure, as markets effectively absorbed that selling behavior. And in 2020, we were significantly worse, but as markets absorbed that selling behavior in 2022, they sold off. Once things had worked themselves through the system, they began buying. And that is where it actually becomes really powerful. So if we start adding in then the target date funds, the 401k contributions, et cetera, we're now talking a couple $1 trillion worth of flows driving markets, helping to explain the extraordinary rebound that we've seen. This is really what we're trying to accomplish within Tier 1. Now, I'll tell you candidly that we don't get it right all the time. Sometimes our biases intrude. Sometimes our macro perspective, we can't avoid the bad habits of saying, here's something you need to be aware of, or how we could see things change. But we will always be presenting the facts behind this stuff and hopefully creating conditions under which you can form your own opinion and conclusions around these, while putting some entertaining text and some lighthearted humor and some jokes in there to make it a very readable piece on a daily basis. With that, I think we can wrap up. Guys, this was fantastic. I really enjoyed the opportunity to introduce you to the rest of the world, and I'm looking forward to making these types of features a regular component of Hedgeye programming.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it.